recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, and distinguished members of this committee. Since I last appeared before you, the more than 115,000 employees of the Department of Justice have continued their work to fulfill our mission on behalf of the American people, to keep our country safe, to protect civil rights, and to uphold the rule of law. Just 10 days ago, we secured the extradition of one of the lead sicarios, or assassins, of the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most dangerous drug trafficking organizations in the world. Just last month, we secured a 27-year prison sentence for a man who attempted to kill NYPD officers in a terrorist attack in Times Square in 2022. In just the first 3 months of this year, we charged 7 members of a hacking group backed by the Chinese government. We disrupted a botnet controlled by Russian intelligence services, and we seized over $108 million and 500,000 barrels of fuel that would otherwise have enabled the government of Iran to further support Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terrorist groups. We have continued our work to drive down violent crime, work that we know is paying off. Last year's historic decline in homicides, the largest one-year decline in 50 years, is continuing. In the first quarter of this year, we have already seen an 18% drop in murders. We know we have much more to do. We have also remained steadfast in our commitment to the Justice Department's founding purpose to protect civil rights. We have aggressively investigated and prosecuted hate crimes that victimize individuals and terrorize entire communities. And we have brought justice to the perpetrators of those crimes, like the defendant in Florida who attacked 2 black women because of the color of their skin, the defendant in Michigan who defaced synagogues with swastikas, the defendant in Missouri who set fire to a community Islamic center, and the defendant in Tennessee who committed a series of arsons targeting Catholic, Methodist, and Baptist churches. We have worked to protect the reproductive freedoms that are protected by federal law. In Idaho, we sued to ensure that women in the state would have access to the emergency care guaranteed to them under federal law. We have continued to protect the right to vote and to have that vote counted. We successfully challenged a redistricting plan in Galveston County, Texas. The district court recognized that the plan violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act by depriving the county's Black and Latino voters of an equal opportunity to participate in the political process and elect a candidate of their choice. We have continued to prosecute fraud, and we have challenged illegal monopolies that drive up prices for consumers. This year, we sued to break up Live Nation Ticketmaster for its monopoly of the live concert industry. And we sued Apple for monopolizing smartphone markets. We have also continued to fulfill our responsibility that underlies all of our work, to uphold the rule of law. That is why we have worked to combat a worrying spike of threats of violence against those who serve the public. Those threats have included targeting of members of Congress, police officers, judges, jurors, election workers, and the Justice Department's own employees. Let me be clear. If anyone threatens public servants with violence, we will hold them accountable. And we will continue to protect our democratic institutions like this one and to bring to justice all those criminally responsible for the January 16th attack on our democracy. As Attorney General, I will continue to forcefully defend the independence of the Justice Department from improper influence or interference of any kind. And I will continue to fiercely protect the integrity of our criminal investigations. Nothing will deter me from fulfilling my obligation to uphold the rule of law. Fulfilling that obligation includes ensuring that the Justice Department respects Congress's important role in our democracy. That is why we have gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure that the committee gets responses to its legitimate requests for information. That is why I have provided the committee with Special Counsel Herr's report, why the Special Counsel testified for more than 5 hours, and why we have gone beyond precedent to provide the committee with the transcripts of the special counsel's interview with the president. But we have made clear that we will not provide audio recordings from which the transcripts that you already have were created. Releasing the audio would chill cooperation with the department in future investigations, and it could influence witnesses' answers if they thought the audio of their law enforcement interviews would be broadcast to Congress and the public. Now, in response, certain members of this committee and the Oversight Committee are seeking contempt as a means of obtaining, for no legitimate purpose, sensitive law enforcement information that could harm the integrity of future investigations. This effort is only the most recent in a long line of attacks on the Justice Department's work. It comes alongside threats to defund particular department investigations, most recently the special counsel's prosecution of the former president. It comes alongside false claims that a jury verdict in a state trial brought by a local district attorney was somehow controlled by the Justice Department. That conspiracy theory is an attack on the judicial process itself. It comes as individual career agents and prosecutors have been singled out just for doing their jobs. It comes as baseless and extremely dangerous falsehoods are being spread about the FBI's law enforcement operations. And it comes at a time when we are seeing heinous threats of violence being directed at the Justice Department's career civil servants. These repeated attacks on the Justice Department are unprecedented and they are unfounded. These attacks have not and they will not influence our decision-making. I view contempt as a serious matter, but I will not jeopardize the ability of our prosecutors and agents to do their jobs effectively in future investigations. I will not be intimidated, and the Justice Department will not be intimidated. We will continue to do our jobs free from political influence, and we will not back down from defending democracy. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule with questions. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman from the ranking members.
I have some unanimous consent requests.
That have to happen right now?
No, they could wait.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, there was an allegation made in a letter yesterday suggesting that the FBI was somehow involved on January 6th. This is ludicrous, and you know it's ludicrous because witnesses...
Is there a unanimous consent request? Is there a unanimous?
It's not a proper unanimous consent.
I have some unanimous consent requests. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an excerpt from the transcript of the committee's interview with Steve D'Antuono, the former leader of the FBI's Washington field office.
Without objection.
Clearly refutes characterizations that the FBI was involved in inciting violence on January 6th.
Without objection. The gentleman from...
I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an excerpt from the special agent in charge of the FBI Boston field office, in which he explains that conspiracies about the FBI causing the Capitol insurrection are false and concerning.
Without objection.
And finally, I ask unanimous consent to enter an excerpt from FBI Director Wray's testimony before this committee last July, where he states, quote, I will say this notion that somehow the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources and agents is ludicrous, and it's a disservice to our brave, hardworking, dedicated men and women. Close quote.
Without objection. The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Attorney General, you've told us that it's a dangerous conspiracy theory to allege that the Department of Justice is communicating with these state and local prosecutions against Trump. You can clear it all up for us right now. Will the Department of Justice provide to the committee all documents, all correspondence between the department and Alvin Bragg's office and Fonnie Willis' office and Letitia James's office?
The offices you're referring to are independent offices of state.
I get that. I get that.
State.
The question is whether or not you will provide all of your documents and correspondence. That's the question. I don't need a history lesson.
Well, I'm going to say again, we do not control those offices. They make their own decisions.
The question is whether you communicate with them, not whether you control them. Do you communicate with them, and will you provide those communications?
You make a request, we'll refer it to our Office of Legislative Affairs.
But see, here's the thing.
They
You
will
come in here
respond
and you lodge
appropriately.
this attack that it's a conspiracy theory, that there is coordinated lawfare against Trump. And then when we say, fine, just give us the documents, give us the correspondence, and then if it's a conspiracy theory, that will be evident. But when you say, well, we'll take your request, and then we'll sort of work it through the DOJ's accommodation process, then you're actually advancing the very dangerous conspiracy theory that you're concerned about. Now, you were a judge, once nominated the highest court in our country. When you were a judge, I'm just curious, did you ever make political donations to partisan candidates?
No.
No, and you didn't, because that would create the potential appearance of impropriety.
I didn't, because there's a federal rule
Oh.
barring federal judges from making contributions.
Right, but under that same theory of attacks on the judicial process, like, shouldn't someone be owed like a jury of their peers and a judge that's non-biased, rather than getting a judge from your political opponent's donor file?
I'm well aware that you're not asking a hypothetical. You're asking me to comment on a jury verdict in another jurisdiction which has to be respected. I won't comment on it. That case is still ongoing. The defendant
Mr.
has
Attorney General,
indicated-
I hadn't asked you about the verdict yet. We were getting there. I was talking about the judge. And so let me ask you this question about your time as a judge. Was there ever a time when you were a judge when you had a family member who was personally profiting off of the notoriety of a case that was before your court?
Look, I'm going to say again, it's very clear you're asking me to comment on a case in another jurisdiction.
No, wait, hold on, Mr. Attorney General. Did you ever have a family member profit off of the notoriety of any case that you sat over?
Say again, you're asking
Yes or no?
me, you're asking me to comment on a case currently.
Well, it seems you're
before
connecting the
another
dots,
court.
Mr. Attorney General. I'm just asking you as to a general principle, but you are aware that Judge Merchan's daughter was profiting off of this prosecution. You are aware that that creates the appearance of impropriety. You know the very reason there's a federal rule against judges giving donations is because it is the very attack on the judicial process that we're concerned about.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with anything you just said, but I'm not going to comment on a.
Okay,
on an
so you
action
won't
in
comment on it,
another
Mr.
court.
Attorney General, but you had no problem dispatching Matthew Colangelo. Who's Matthew Colangelo?
That is false. I did not dispatch Matthew Colangelo.
Matthew
That's
Colangelo,
false.
Matthew
False.
Colangelo became the Assistant Attorney General at the very beginning of the Biden administration. Without having been Senate confirmed, goes and gets this senior role at the DOJ, and then after, I believe it's Gupta replaces Colangelo, Colangelo makes this remarkable downstream career journey from the U.S. Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., and then pops up in Alvin Bragg's office to go get Trump. And you're saying that's just a career choice that was made that has nothing to do with the lawfare coordinated by
I'm
the
saying it's false. I did not dispatch Mr. Colangelo anywhere.
Well, do you know how he ended up there?
I assume he applied for a job there and got the job.
But see, you know
I
what?
can tell you I had nothing to do with it.
Well, you might not have had anything to do with it, but we've got this contemporaneous evidence in Mr. Pomerantz's book. So Pomerantz writes this book, which I'm sure you're aware of, where he says, we put together the legal eagles to get Trump. We got all these folks together and we assembled them for that purpose. And so when we on the Judiciary Committee think about attacks on the judicial process, our concern is that the facts and the law aren't being followed. A target is acquired, here, Trump, and then you assemble the legal talent from DOJ, Mr. Pomerantz, and you bring everybody in to get him. And meanwhile, the judge is making money on it. The judge is making money on it, or the judge's family is making money on it for stuff that you yourself wouldn't do. You know, no one's going to buy this. No one's going to believe it. It's going to create great disruption. And I am saddened by it because, like you, I have given my life to the law. I care deeply about the law, and I think that the lawfare we've seen against President Trump will do great damage well beyond our time in public service. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
Ranking members recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, do you want to respond to anything in Mr. Gaetz's tirade?
I think everything he was talking about was a case in another jurisdiction, an independent prosecutor. Mr. Pomerantz worked for that independent prosecutor. I don't know Mr. Pomerantz. I don't know what's in his book, but these are decisions made in another office independent of the Justice Department.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Last week, as we all know, a jury of his peers convicted former President Trump on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records of the first degree. The case was brought by the Manhattan DA, so it is a state case, not a federal case. I shouldn't have to ask you this, Mr. Attorney General, but since the majority seems to be confused, can you please explain the difference between a state case and a federal case?
Yes, the Manhattan District Attorney has jurisdiction over cases involving New York state law, completely independent of the Justice Department, which has jurisdiction over cases involving federal law. We do not control the Manhattan District Attorney. Manhattan District Attorney does not report to us. The Manhattan District Attorney makes its own decisions about cases that he wants to bring under his state law.
Thank you. My Republican colleagues seem to believe that the Department of Justice is secretly coordinating the now successful prosecution of former President Trump in New York. Is there any truth to this allegation? And what is your response to this allegation?
The case in New York is brought by the Manhattan District Attorney independently on his own volition and on his own determination of what he believed was a violation of state law.
Mr. Attorney General, 2 weeks ago, this committee took the extraordinary step of holding you in contempt. I want to make some things clear for the record. Since 2022, when the chairman took over the committee, the Department of Justice has produced over 92,000 pages of documents and made 25 employees available for interviews. We've run the numbers. This is more than double the number of documents and exponentially more witnesses than the Trump administration's Department of Justice produced to this committee in 4 years. And with respect to the actual audio recordings sought by the majority, the Department of Justice has produced full and complete transcripts of the conversations memorialized by these recordings. Is that correct?
It is.
There's been an allegation that the transcripts might have been altered in some way. Is there any truth to that allegation?
There's no truth to that. The senior career official in the department, in a declaration he filed under oath, stated that he had compared the audio to the transcript, and that it is an accurate, transcript is accurate with the exceptions of us and ahs and repetitions of words like I and and. And he consulted with Mr. Herr, the special counsel, and with the FBI agents in the room who agreed that who created the transcript and who agreed that it was an accurate transcript.
Thank you. One more question. Mr. Attorney General, throughout the 118th Congress, Republicans have made bogus allegations claiming that the Justice Department has been weaponized. Most recently, there was an allegation that the FBI was authorized to, quote, kill the former president. What impact does this type of rhetoric have on the career prosecutors and law enforcement agents at the Department of Justice?
This is dangerous. It raises the threats of violence against prosecutors and career agents. The allegation is false. As the FBI has explained, the document that's being discussed is our standard use of force protocol, which is a limitation on the use of force and which is routinely part of the package for search warrants and was part of the package for the search of President Biden's home as well.
So when former President Trump alleges that this was an assassination attempt against him, he is not telling the truth, either knowingly or, as is often the case with him, unknowingly.
I'm just saying that the allegation is not true. This is our standard use of force policy, which limits the use of force that agents can use. It is used as a routine matter in searches. That was a court-authorized search, and it accompanied that package as it routinely does.
Thank you. So in other words, when former President Trump makes that allegation, he is either deliberately or, as is often the case, not knowing what he's, either deliberately lying or, as is often the case, not knowing what he's talking about. Thank you. I yield back.